Hey, what's up? It's Vince Leah from VinceLeah.com, and today I'm hanging out with my buddy Graeham. Now, Graeham, you have an interesting story about being diagnosed with diabetes and how you transitioned to a plant-based diet.
Yeah.
And so you could kind of share some of that information and how you've transitioned and the effects that you've felt on your body.
I was diagnosed with diabetes on Halloween, which I thought was kind of ironic. It's like the sugariest day of the year. A couple of weeks before that, I had neuropathy in my fingers. So what that means is I wasn't able to feel some of my fingers. And it just felt like, I woke up in the morning, felt like I slept on my arm wrong or something.
Yeah.
But it was still there at lunch and then a teeny tiny bit before I went to bed. So I was like, that's not normal.
Yeah.
And I have some other things that aren't normal. Go to my doctor and get checked out. Did like the normal blood test. When your doctor calls you, it's usually a bad thing. He called, he was like, you have to come in right away, blah, blah, blah. I had a fasting blood sugar of 264. For those that don't know, the normal range for like an optimal range is in the 80s. Between 100 and 120, you are considered pre-diabetic. And so if you're over 120, you are diabetic. 3 times the normal amount. And so I got that diagnosis on a Monday. That same Monday was the first day of my plant-based diet, totally by chance. So my wife, Delia, aka Philadelia, joined a TV show called The Big Fat Truth. He was showing people the plant-based diet on a TV show format. So in the show, The Big Fat Truth, JD Roth took different groups of people, and over the course of 90 days, he would take their biomarkers before, I think after 10 days, and then he did a couple other ones, and he showed the improvements on all of their biomarkers. And so I was gonna support my wife by doing the diet with her, right? And so it started with, they had a meal delivery service. Mm-hmm. I forget what it was called, but they would have like shakes that you would freeze. That would be your breakfast or whatever. So it's really convenient, and kind of forced you to eat right the first 10 days, which is probably the hardest.
Yeah.
Right? And so I was doing that with her.
How long was the program meant to be for?
Program's meant to be for 90 days.
Okay.
So within those 90 days, I had some crazy results. Later that week, I was given 4 medications, and those medications I was supposed to be on the rest of my life. I was also told to go to a specialist, a diabetes specialist. She gave me insulin. A week after that, I woke up in the middle of the night and I was starving. Like I was at a 10 where I was like starting to sweat, and I was like, lay off me, I'm starving. I was like, get out of the way. Like nothing in the world matters. Totally tunnel vision on food. And I was hypoglycemic. I was taking my medication like to the T, exactly as it was prescribed. But what was happening is the plant-based diet had improved all of my biomarkers. So the pharmaceutical drugs that I was taking was slamming down my blood sugar that was normal.
Yeah.
And so I became hypoglycemic from medication. Doctor said, okay, go off of the medications. I stayed on one metformin because it's safe. They've been doing it for 30 years. But like this was really legit. And so it was really an eye opener. And I didn't believe it would work, to be honest. Like going into it, I was like, they say things, I'm a little bit more skeptical. But like going through it, it's 100% living proof.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And so I continued on it, and I got my blood sugars down to the 80s. And I said, I don't need any medication. Why am I taking this one medication just because? I was like, well, when do I stop taking it? Oh, you should be on that the rest of your life. And I was like, that sounds terrible. Why would I take a pharmaceutical drug just because the rest of my life?
Well, you don't have to.
When
your markers are showing that you don't
Everything
need it.
was good.
What was your diet like before you were diagnosed with diabetes?
So immediately prior to being diagnosed with diabetes, it was generally eggs and bacon for breakfast. I would do chicken or beef, potatoes, and then dinner would be plenty of dairy and meat.
So almost like a standard American.
I would say standard American. I feel like my friends felt I was on the healthier side of the spectrum.
Yeah.
I grew up on a pescatarian diet.
Okay.
So my parents were real health conscious for a diet. My dad had a little bit of a health scare that kind of triggered them into being a little bit extra on the health. I had beef for the first time when I was 11. Then I woke up in the middle of the night and threw up. My body had never experienced beef before, and
That
ground beef, so
reaction.
probably low quality ground beef, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's crazy. And so then fast forward a little bit, I went back to the pescatarian diet. That's dairy, fish, and vegetables, no red meat. I had my first hamburger when I'm in college. I'm 21 years old. It's good. Fast food tastes good, you know?
Yeah.
So I started eating it more regularly, started, you know, in the macho side, you know, of marketing kicks in. And I ate like a couple $6 burgers, you know? And like those I could tell after eating a $6 burger, my body was just like not happy.
Yeah.
And that's how I continued through my 20s and into my 30s, and then Halloween 2016.
Now, since being diagnosed and transitioning to a plant-based diet, do you take a certain amount of supplements? Do you have like certain vitamins or minerals that you take on a daily basis to help manage that condition?
I take two things because I'm on a whole food plant-based diet. So I'm on a vegan diet, so I make sure I get my B12, vitamin B12, and make sure I get my omegas.
DHA,
EPA. So I take supplements for those, and I additionally usually take daily at least 1 tablespoon of ground flaxseed. Those are like the baseline supplements for the diet I'm taking.
Okay.
And then I take a slew of other supplements, and it's been changing over the course of time as we're going through and trying to figure out what's going on with my health. I don't have type 1 diabetes, don't have type 2 diabetes. I have what was called by my doctor type 1.5 diabetes. It's a super small percentage of people that have it.
Okay.
So what that means is I produce some insulin, just not the normal amount. So we think it's some environmental factor triggered this. We learned that I have DNA that makes me susceptible to mold toxins. Turns out the house we were at had a toxic level of mold. Since then, we've been detoxing. So most people will say I have type 1 diabetes, or I'm gonna have type 1 diabetes. I'm gonna burn out my pancreas. I don't fit the category. They were like, all right, well, basically come back when you get worse. I was like, well, that sounds like a terrible idea.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get to the root of it. So I've been doing lots of things, and part of that is different supplement regimens.
Yeah.
And so right now I'm doing one that includes mutant strep. With this doctor that has a theory, so like he says strep can become dormant and attack other organs, and that's separate from like a throat issue. Lots of supplements, I don't even know them, so I can't list them for you. Magnesium is really important. I take a multivitamin and vitamin D. Fun fact, you can track your immune system with what's called the GAD antibodies, GAD antibodies. If you're not sick, you have a GAD antibody level of 0. If you're sick, I think the range is like 0 to 5. I was so high they couldn't measure it. My immune system was like cranking. So I was like that for almost a year. Recently, I've come down into it. So something I'm doing is working, which is some good news.
How do they measure that? Is it through
It's a blood test.
work? Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. We were talking earlier about, because you were saying you're going to go get a colonoscopy done.
Yeah. Fun times!
And I was curious because you were explaining to me, and maybe you could explain here, the relationship between the pancreas and the digestive system and how that all works, and if you have diabetes, how you have to actually monitor that as well.
Sure. So the way I like to explain diabetes to people that don't know what diabetes is or how it works. So a regular person with a normal functioning system will not exceed a blood sugar level of 140. Your pancreas produces insulin. Mm-hmm. Insulin is a hormone that tells your cells to open up their glucose receptors in the first place. Type 2 diabetics have a working pancreas. They produce insulin. The receptors open, but they're clogged. Type 1 diabetics don't produce any insulin. So their cells are never told to open up their receptors. So I produce some insulin, not the normal amount. Once I used a plant-based diet to clear the glucose receptors, I reduce my insulin tolerance, so the insulin that I do produce works way better. And that's how I was able to get off the medication. So the pancreas is responsible for two things. For releasing the insulin, that's one part of my issue. Mm-hmm. It's also responsible for releasing digestive enzymes. Mm-hmm. 95% of the pancreas's responsibility is the digestive enzymes, and that little tiny 5% is the insulin. So I also have an issue with my digestive tract. So my stool is not solid like a normal poop. And so we're looking at that as maybe a pancreatitis issue. So I'm working with my GI doctor on that.
Is that related to your diabetes? Is that a separate?
It's related because it comes from the same organ.
Okay.
So the pancreas is responsible for both, and both are not operating optimally right now.
Do a lot of people with diabetes also experience that? Is that
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay.
So diabetes are usually in one of those two buckets, the type 1 or type 2.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining me today and sharing your story, Graham.
Sure, absolutely.
Hopefully you found this information useful, and go ahead and make sure you check out Graham's YouTube channel, which he just started. And what's the name of it? Because this name is pretty awesome.
It's called Type What? That's what with 3 A's, because that's really the feeling and the phrase that came in my head when they said type 1.5. So I was like, it's type what? I have to go figure this out. I'm gonna create a channel, share the information as I learn it. So
Awesome, and I'll go ahead and link his channel in the description box below so you can check out all his content. Make sure you join the Fit From Food notification squad by hitting that little bell next to the subscribe button, and leave me a comment. Let me know what questions you have regarding this video, and we'll try to answer them as soon as we can. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel as I post new videos every week, and remember to keep living fit from food. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.